Null Origins, one of the deadliest TMNT villains. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have been around since 1984, fighting villains and stopping crime. During their vast tenure as crime fighters, they have come across various villains of all shapes and sizes. While most of us are familiar with the iconic TMNT villain Shredder, there is one other villain that is comparable to him, a shrewd businessman called Null. While his name doesn't exactly inspire fear, he is the epitome of capitalist evil, destroying rainforests and dumping toxic waste. This video will break down all his appearances spanning across TMNT media over the years, along with exploring his shrewd personality and a new version of him, so keep watching. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Exploring the origins and backstory of Null. Null serves as one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mutanimal's main adversaries. He is likely the Turtles' second most lethal foe after the Shredder, which puts him super high on their villains list. Null also on various occasions has asserted that he is the devil himself, which can often be seen reflecting in his evil schemes and appearance, making him a deeply interesting character. This also amps up the scary and mysterious aura that surrounds him and adds a layer of fear as the Turtles face off with the devil in human form. As per the Archie comic, Null is shown to be a businessman dressed in a purple leisure suit who at first seemed to be a little more than a trivial foe of the TMNT. He was your run-of-the-mill capitalist villain who was in charge of projects that were damaging to the environment, including leading initiatives that involved burning down the South American rainforest and unloading toxic waste into the ocean. These were obviously evil schemes, and the Turtles were often drawn to them so that they could counter his activities. However, to everyone's horror, it was soon discovered that Null was attempting to wipe out humanity and had sold the Earth to the extraterrestrial warlord Maligna by striking a deal with her generals Skull and Bean. In order to accomplish the mass extermination of humankind, he also made a bargain with the Four Horsemen, a collection of demons going by the names of Pestilence, War, Famine, and Death. More on the story arc later. However, the collective efforts of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mutanimals managed to foil Null's schemes. Later, Null also assembled a group of cyborgs known as the Gang of Four who killed the Mutanimals before being defeated by the Ninja Turtles. He had various intriguing storylines during his stint as a major villain in the Archie comics, and we'll delve deep into their plotlines in the next segment of the video. Last but not least, as far as his character and personality are concerned, Null has been showing as having ties to Hell, leading many to believe that he is an ascended demon who took on human features as he came to Earth. The character initially had two tiny horns poking out of his forehead, and with each new terrible act he executed, his appearance got more and more demonic, further alluding to his demonic origins in nature. He eventually developed larger horns, a tail resembling a demon, and bat-like wings. It is never stated outright that Null is the devil himself, but this could very well be the truth. What do you think? Tell us in the comment section below. Null was a crucial villain in the Archie Comics TMNT adventures. Mr. Null, who made multiple appearances in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles adventures by Archie Comics, as we already know, was the ruthless and callous CEO of a business conglomerate that engaged in environmentally harmful actions on purpose. He also frequently collaborated with other evil characters to spread as much havoc and pain as they could. At first glance, Null appeared to be a typical human, but a pair of tiny horns on his forehead gave away his grotesque nature and possibly hellish origins. Eventually, Mr. Null admitted during the course of the series that he was carrying out immoral deeds in order to actually become the devil, and every time one of his schemes was successful, he would acquire additional devilish abilities. He would often flee after being defeated, only to come back with more and more demonic traits and skills to employ against the Turtles. Here are all the main storylines where Null serves as the primary antagonist. Number 1. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles vs. Null's Alien Goons. In this story arc, the Turtles are attacked by the evil businessman Null and his alien lackey Skull and Bean. It is revealed here that Null had sold the Earth to an alien warlord named Maligna, and now it was his duty to hand over control of the Earth to the alien. Skull and Bean were deployed as the invasion's early scouts when Maligna set her sights on Earth. In fact, they were the ones who shook hands with Null to seal the handover of Earth, as Null promised to make the transfer as easy as possible. There was only one hindrance: the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. With the assistance of Kid Terra, a Mr. Null employee, the brothers were able to defeat the Turtles after a short but engaging fight and capture them along with Splinter, April, and Mondo Gecko. While the aliens and Null gloated about their success, Splinter summoned rats to chew through the ropes, which ultimately saved the Turtles, Splinter, April, and Mondo. As soon as they were set free, they attacked the aliens with renewed vigor. This time, seeing that they could not win, the aliens used smoke as a distraction and fled on their spaceship. However, in the ensuing confusion and chaos, Raphael and Mundo slipped on board their ship. They went on to defeat Maligna with the help of Man J, Jaguar, Dreadman, Leatherhead, Wingnut, and Screwloose, the newly created mighty Mutanimals. Null, as usual, went scot-free despite being the one who had engineered his entire plan since the very beginning. Number 2. Null and the Four Horsemen. Null teams up with the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse in the story arc titled United We Stand, Divided We Fall. The Turtles engaged in combat with Null and the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse in Brazil during this 3-issue crossover with Mighty Mutanimals. The 4 classic images of the writers of the end times in the New Testament of the Bible, death, war, pestilence, and famine, inspired this deadly quartet of villains known as the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Since he was personally giving commands to Death, who in turn used the other horsemen as puppets, Null himself appeared to be the group's leader, further alluding to the idea that he is indeed a demon or even the devil himself. Null wanted to take over the universe and erase mankind from the face of the earth. Further, he wanted revenge on the Turtles for destroying his deal with Maligna, and thus, he enlisted the help of the Four Horsemen. In the first 2 parts of this series, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Mutanimals engage in battle with the Four Horsemen. It is only in the 3rd part that Null makes an appearance himself. Null has the Turtles and Mutanimals chained to the stakes by mechanical latches right at the beginning of the issue. Null brags in the faces of the Turtles and the Mutanimals who are surrounded by war, famine, and pestilence, while Death toys with his marionettes of the other 3 horsemen using which he controls them. Jaguar then asks Null why he had taken his mother, Juntara, and devastated the rainforest. The evil corporate demon says that he did it to destroy all life on Earth. There is not a hint of remorse in his voice or expressions. He believed that he had finally won against the Turtles, but he was terribly mistaken. The Turtles, with the help of Azrael, the guardian guide for the Path of the Four Winds Eastern Quadrant, who was a changeling and had the ability to transform between a bald eagle and a young woman, aligned with Juntara, Jaguar's mother, and Kid Terra, managed to turn the table and defeat the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse in Null. Although, Null did manage to fatally shoot Kid Terra using his handgun. But as soon as he realizes that the tide has turned, he unfurls his gigantic bat wings and flies away, vowing to return and exact his revenge. Number 3. Terracide and the Death of the Mutanimals. Last but not least, we have what is probably the most cruel and gruesome storyline that Null has been a part of, Terracide. Terracide means the extermination of an entire planet, and that is exactly what Null planned on doing in issue 55 to 57 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures, published in April 1994 by Archie Comics. Another fast-paced 3-issue plotline, this one begins with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles returning home from Jerusalem in a cargo plane. A bizarre monster with an eyeball for a head attacks their aircraft. However, sitting inside the plane and unable to see the creature responsible for the attack, the TMNT mistakenly assumed the attack to be a chance lightning strike, but the pilot is hit on the head and the spacecraft starts to fall towards the water as he loses control of the plane and his consciousness. On the other hand, Future Raph and Future Dawn discover their companions' bodies on the beach of the Mutanimals' private island. Candy Fine shows up and recounts the horrific details of the Mutanimals' demise as the Turtles wonder how they could have perished and at whose hands. According to her, an extraterrestrial spacecraft that belonged to Skull and Bean crash-landed close to the Mutanimals' base. A fight immediately broke out while the Mutanimals defeated their old foes. Something else was waiting for them. After the battle was won by the Mutanimals, 4 more adversaries with weapons showed up. Deadeye, who caused the earlier plane accident, was one of the evil cyborg-like villains. It was not much of a fight, as they were immediately shot to death by the crooks. The gang was brutally torn apart by machine gun fire, which resulted in a very contentious and graphic death at the time of its release. The wicked villains boarded Skull and Bean's spaceship after the massacre and took off. Who ordered the hit? You guessed it, it was Null. This was not the end of his evil deeds, however. After Future Dawn and Future Raph listen to the story, they board the Mutanimal ship and make their way to New York City. They come across the crashed plane of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and thus attempt a rescue. Michelangelo had unfortunately been taken by the Coast Guard, who had also arrived at the location. As soon as they stepped off of their ship, none other than the demon Null appeared, and he brought with him the 4 gun-toting criminals to shoot the rest of our heroes. The Turtles were caught off guard as the gang of 4, Skull and Bean, attacked them. Null posed as Mondo Gecko, using his shape-shifting abilities during the altercation in order to dupe Candy Fine into letting him abduct the woman. They then launched their spacecraft heading towards the moon along with Skull and Bean. Despite being bamboozled, the Turtles managed to regroup and follow Null's spacecraft. In the last part of the series, the entire Terracide invasion came to a head as the Turtles and their allies landed on the dark side of the moon. They arrived and found Maligna's Hive World ship tucked away in orbit. Maligna is seen rejoicing at her triumph with Null on board the Hive World. Later we learn that Future Dawn had used his carry-on time-slip device to quickly move everyone to Maligna's ship. The Hive World began to spin out of control as Slash attacked the organic heart of the enormous ship, which the party had discovered during their exploration. The Hive World was then defended by Maligna's warriors, and massive conflict ensued. The TMNT eventually prevailed in the conflict and even vanquished Maligna. In contrast to Maligna and Slash, Null avoided death at the conclusion of the Terracide storyline by escaping into space. He promised Raphael that they would meet once more before fleeing. It is uncertain where he is right now and could pop up with a new evil scheme at any given moment. What makes Null such a deadly villain? Being a villain who was second in both ability and wickedness only to Shredder, Null is rightly considered as a deadly villain. His lethal nature is exacerbated by the fact that he is probably an ascended demon. With the exception of his horns, Null began as a regular human, but as his wicked deeds progressed, he grew more and more demonic, and his powers increased alongside his changing appearance. He also exhibits superhuman strength in the comics. The fact that Null fights successfully against the Turtles and the Mutanimals suggests that one of his demonic advantages is improved combat prowess and physical strength. Changes to Null's design over his comic book appearances have further showcased a muscular build, pointing at the fact that he was indeed super strong. Later on, Null also developed the ability to shapeshift, making him a feared adversary since he could show up anywhere looking like anyone he wanted to. For example, to approach Candy, Mondo's girlfriend, he takes the form of the murdered Mutanimal Mondo, a terrifying ability to have. It is further interesting to note that Null also boasts the capacity to conjure fire as a result of his wings. He can either call forth walls of flame in front of him or blast fire from his fingertips. This makes him a very dangerous enemy on top of all the abilities we have already discussed. His fire projection ability also ties in with his devil character, possibly embodying the flames of hell. Null further developed mind control skills in the form in which he was last seen in the comics. He made Candy witness a vision of the mighty Mutanimals burning in hell before taking control of her mind and making her his adoring object of desire. The effect ultimately dissipated when Null took off and Candy regained consciousness. Mind control is a seriously awesome but also terrifying ability when in the wrong hands, and Null showed just how bad it could get. Null also acquired the ability to fly in his last form, and he could do it even in the absence of gravity. With all these powers combined, Null has emerged as a deadly villain in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe. The new version of Null explored. So far we have seen Null as a big, broad man towering at the height of 6 foot 2 inches. However, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Armageddon Game brings to fans a completely different version of the deadly villain, Madame Null. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe's pantheon has been playing chaotic games of conquest and using mortal lives for its own entertainment since the beginning of time. However, the evil Rat King is unsuccessful in enlisting his siblings this time, forcing him to start his own game and enlisting the help of the nefarious triad of Baxter Stockman, Krang, and Madame Null. To prevent Armageddon from occurring, Shredder teams up with the Turtle Brothers while seeking out additional friends to oppose the evil god. The first issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Armageddon Game, follows the players as they struggle and worry about getting ready for the impending conflict. The Ninja Turtles divide, with one group following Orokusaki to Dimension X, and the other going in search of Old Hob as the Rat King meets Akka and a sleeping Kitsune in the Thin Places. Further, a raging alligator that has somehow been placed aboard a helicopter and transported to Dr. Barlow's new facility is the new host body of Krang, who's being pursued by Madame Null's lackeys in another area of town. It is during this time that we are introduced to the Null Turtles, 4 mercenaries who work on behalf of Madame Null and carry out her dirty work of terrorizing humans. This series showcases this trio of opposing ninjas wearing white masks as their relationship to Madame Null, who they share a name with, is gradually exposed. She is shown to be working hand in hand with Baxter Stockman, a mad villainous scientist who is often seen teaming up with Shredder or Krang. Madame Null is the CEO of the Null Group, a diversified conglomerate with interests in a variety of endeavors and connections to other dimensions in the IDW continuity. Prior to the Mutanimals forcing them to stop their activities, the Null Group experimented with hybrid combinations in an effort to generate and commercially exploit mutants. Mutagen Man, Sally Pride, Man Ray, Zodi, and Dreadman were notable creations by the Null Group. Although her precise nature is still unknown, Null served as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutanimals miniseries main enemy. The way she looks and the way she speaks about the many perceived flaws in the human race clearly distinguish her as either not human or no longer human. She is extremely resilient, as evidenced by the fact that she survived a direct hit from a rocket-propelled grenade strike, but she was at least hurt and momentarily startled. Interestingly, simply via contact, she is able to rob another person of their life force, making her a formidable enemy just like old Null. Further, she also appears in IDW Publishing's 6-part Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Jennika 2 miniseries, which focuses on Jennika and Mutant Town. It has 2 main plot lines, monsters and redemption. In this miniseries, when the inhabitants of Mutant Town and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe began to mutate into enormous monster versions of themselves, Jennika, the newest Ninja Turtle, reluctantly joined up with Ivan, a hostile rival, to capture the monsters terrorizing the city before going underground to find the cause of the outbreak. Finally meeting with the mutants dwelling below the surface, Jennika and Ivan discovered that they were often sympathetic and vulnerable to attacks themselves. The group's leader maintained he had no idea what was causing the alterations, but one enthusiastic elderly woman spoke out about the Nightshade Fairy, whom she claimed to have conversed with directly. Jennika chose to wait and attack the fairy with Ivan, but instead she got into a fight with Zodi, a scorpion mutant. The new adversary then administered the super mutagen to Ivan, but that did not stop Jennika from pursuing her to the location of her origin, which just so happened to be the workplace of one of the Turtles' most dangerous adversaries, Madame Null. In addition to its regular business operations, Null Group has always had a particular interest in catching, researching, and profiting from mutants. The Null Group used mutants as lab rats, torturing and performing tests on them until their activities were put to an end by the venerable Turtles' adversary Old Hob and the Mutanimals. Null now appeared to have discovered a less direct method of misusing mutants, and it began by threatening Mutant Town. The most recent wave of violent mutations was orchestrated by Null, who waited for them to intensify to the point where media attention would make the general population view mutants as nothing less than a lethal hazard. Political opinion may well be influenced if public opinion could be, which would allow Null Group to intervene and save the day by incarcerating mutants they could subsequently exploit for profit by using them as slave labor. Madame Null herself shows up in the third issue of the series. However, her cunning mind is on full display here as she unravels her entire plan, only for it to be revealed that she was a hologram all this while, with the real Madame Null tucked away safe somewhere far away from the reach of the crime-fighting Turtles. This version of Null definitely deserves all the praise she gets. I would not mess with her if I were you. Null is a classic villain with modern and intriguing twist. Starting off as a menace to the Turtles, via his damaging and nefarious schemes, he slowly became more and more scary. Further, the adaptation of the villain in the IDW continuity freshened up the character and gave it a whole new aura and demeanor. Today, the word Null is associated with some of the evilest acts committed in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe. Hence, this one is definitely a villain to watch out for. Which version of Null do you like more? Tell us in the comment section below.